Michael, you've spoken out about witnessing Donald Trump's bigotry behind closed doors. You've spoken about it now under oath. You've written about it. And so I want to go to you first. Take a look at this key moment in last night's debate.
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what, somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem.
Stand by to the Proud Boys, and when he was asked about white supremacy. Michael, your view of that, and what have you seen in your time with him that helps explain that so people know what they're voting on if they want to support him in November?
Well, Trump has made racism a central tenet of this campaign. And in this case, he's blown his dog whistle at the Proud Boys, and he's essentially called his supremacist horde, to their battle stations. That's how I saw it. And it's really not what people think. You have to really understand Donald Trump to understand, and I do this a lot in my book, Disloyal, what he's really thinking. He's refusing to disavow them because they are now his army, and he will call them to arms when he loses as an attempt to retain control over power. He sees them as an army. They dress like an army. They behave like an army. They brandish the Trump flag, the Make America Great Again flag, as they walk down the street, attacking people. This is his army, and he intends on calling them to act.
Tony, you're nodding.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely right. I think that, listen, Trump is at a very, very difficult moment. He's been getting angrier and angrier over the past couple of months for what I believe, and see what these guys think, are two reasons. One, he increasingly believes he's going to lose, at least lose legitimately. And the worst thing in the world for Donald Trump is to feel like a loser. It's obliterating to him. The second thing is that if he loses, he's worried he's about to get criminally indicted and that he could end up in prison.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, Tony's 100% correct. I mean, there's nothing else I can add to it. He hates to lose. It's a big problem for him. He's all about winning. I talk about that as well, in the book. And he is concerned. There are a multitude of investigations right now pending against him and the Trump organization. And the way that he believes that he's going to stop them from continuing is to retain control and to retain the presidency.
Right. You're both speaking about his view of everything, do or die, total war, and the legitimate evidence out there for something that does not face most politicians or most presidents, which is the idea that losing is also associated with losing the power that might keep your liberty and keep you potentially out of other legal problems or even, criminal legal exposure. Anthony, I want to bring you in here. And again, you've spoken about this, so I don't say this to give you a hard time, but just part of my job is you have, like others, been very supportive of this president before making your evolution. So with that context, let's take a look at some of that.
I think he's got some of the best political instincts in the world and perhaps in history. He's done a phenomenal job for the American people.
He is giving people a license to hate, to provide a source of anger, to go after each other.
Walk us through how you, a very intelligent, well-educated adult professional, felt that way or said those things recently and land where you do today on this panel saying you've seen Trump up close and you're warning the American people.
Well, I'm blaming the whole thing on Michael, Ari, because he's the one that introduced me to Mr. Trump. So you get the whole thing. But no, in all seriousness, what I said was he has great political instincts, and he does have great political instincts. You have to acknowledge that if you want to defeat Mr. Trump, you have to accept what his strengths and weaknesses are. But my evolution really came from watching the presidency unfold. I was actually trying to stay loyal after I got fired. And I ended up seeing a lot of things that you couldn't take. And so one of my liberal friends said, well, he was the same guy in 2015 as he was in 2019 when you were going against him. So what do you say to that? And my answer to that is I'm not the same person. I'm way more psychologically minded. The way I got fired, the way I got roughed up by the experience made me more empathetic, more mature. and more psychologically aware of what's going on around me. And it sort of broke me out of that cult. And so I have to own my mistakes, certainly. But what I also want to do is provide an off-ramp, Ari, for other people where they're looking at this situation. They know it's ugly. They know it's a gruesome situation. And let's get them the off-ramp that they need.
It's so interesting you say that, Anthony, because the off-ramp is, the whole panel stays. Tony, I'm going to go to you. But this off-ramp is something that is why we're having this conversation tonight. America saw this debate last night. The panel stays, but this is another key question I want to get into with our guests. You have many swing state voters looking at this, the final month of the election cycle. And one question is, after you go Trump, do you ever go back? In entertainment and politics, Trump's never been a broadly popular figure. He's no Oprah. But Trump has a small and fervently dedicated following. So it does matter how people break away. What the off-ramp is, as Anthony Scaramucci just mentioned, as these colleagues of ours here from Donald Trump are going to get into. So I want to put a little bit more evidence on the table. When you look at not just these famous politicos, but lesser-known Americans, there are many who start out liking Donald Trump, believing him only to learn it was a con. And before politics, that included people who believed Trump would do what he said. Small business entrepreneurs back in 2005 who believed Trump would be personally involved in backing a marketing company they had when he never even showed up. And they sued him for fraud and false advertising. Trump fans who believed that Donald Trump was doing public works through his charity, which was literally shut down and fined for conning them because it was all a lie. Or, of course, the many Trump fans who spent up to $35,000 to get classes from Trump at Trump University, where they found out it was a fraud. No Trump there to do any teaching or classes, no university to speak of. Something that actually converted the most loyal type of Trump fan, someone willing to spend their own money to just be with him, into a con victim seeking justice. This is the boom-bust cycle we've seen of Trumpism. I say that not as a political observation, but as the evidence from Trump's own former fans, former fervent supporters, whose feelings often curdle into people who find themselves repulsed and repelled in the end.
Former Defense Secretary James Mattis condemning President Trump, accusing the president of deliberately trying to divide Americans.
The president's worst impulses can't be ameliorated.
Well, if you Google the word sociopath, you'll get the first list will be the 10 key qualities of a sociopath. That is a perfect description of Donald Trump.
I liked working for him, but when I saw how he talked about us when he started his presidency, I felt humiliated.
The entire program was smoke and mirrors.
Do those stories of smoke and mirrors apply to this election? There are some echoes here. There's a farmer, Rick Tellis, who spoke out about regretting his vote for Trump and even spoke at the DNC. And there's data showing a portion of Americans defecting out of the Trump bubble. For example, did you know that in battleground states, now about 1 out of 20 Trump voters, 6% of his 2016 supporters, say they will not have any chance of backing him again? We turn that process to each of you, starting with Tony. What is specific to the support that Trump endears that then is important to understand if someone's going to break away?
Look, first of all, it's mostly men. You know, women are overwhelmingly against Trump. Men are for him. There's a disease that especially afflicts men. And most of all, men who grow up with a feeling of not being good enough. And it's the disease of trying to win from the outside world through money and power and fame, the love and recognition that was missing for them when they grew up in their own families. It's the heart of why Trump does what he does. He's still trying to prove his worth to his daddy. It's the story I tell about myself in dealing with the devil. I suspect it's true. I don't know, but I suspect it's true for Michael and Anthony. I've reckoned with it over the past 30 years. Trump hasn't. And the reckoning is why I feel such joy in giving away my royalties from the Art of the Deal to people and causes that can serve a greater good. So in my case, over the next month, I'll donate my next tranche of royalties, as I've donated all royalties from the Art of the Deal since Trump was elected, to Joe Biden and to Democrats fighting for Republican Senate seats and to causes that Trump hates. It's my way of getting Trump to support what he hates.
Anthony?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. You know, I grew up in a blue collar neighborhood. You know, my parents did give me a lot of love, but we were hustling. We were hustling for in a tight budgeted family, and I was out to do well and try to live the American dream. And I read the book that Tony wrote. I told him that when I was about 23 years old, and I was inspired by it. And so for me, when I met Mr. Trump, and Michael did introduce me to him, I had this feeling about him that, okay, this is a doer. This is a guy that can get things done. And then more time I spent with him, I saw him as a raconteur. And then when we were on the campaign together, Michael could attribute to this. He was way more relaxed on the campaign because he didn't think he was going to win the presidency. When he got to the presidency,
so let me push on that point, because you're answering specifically what Tony raises to Anthony and then to Michael. Anthony, did you feel that associating yourself with Trump, in your case personally, but for many other Americans it's at a distance, did it make you feel bigger or better about yourself initially?
Well, I would have to be honest with that and say no in the beginning, but when he won the presidency, yes. The presidency, that's where I made my mistake. My ego and my pride kicked in. And when your ego and pride kicks in, Ari, your emotions go up and your intelligence goes down. And so, yes, when he won the presidency, I was attracted to the idea of working in the White House. I have to live with that and reckon with that for the rest of my life, because he was the wrong man to go to work for or work with. But not in the beginning, because I had already had a very good career. I was hosting a show on the Fox Business Channel, and I just thought it was going to be a lot of fun to be a part of the campaign. But when he made the transition to the presidency, the answer to that question is a very honest yes.
And so, Michael, the same question to you, which you explore in the book, do you ever feel like you're speaking to your past self when you speak, as people are listening to you now on this program, your book, your podcast? You're speaking sometimes towards people who are where you were a few years ago in terms of how they support Trump.
Yeah. Just to talk about what Tony had brought up, I grew up in a very loving home, and my relationship, even to this day, with my father is unbreakable. I love the man. I was never looking for a replacement father. What Trump was more like a patriarch. It's a little bit different. But what really enticed me wasn't the money, like Judge Pauly used to say, or what he said at my sentencing. It had nothing to do with the money. Like Anthony and Tony, I was very successful. I had done very well early on in my career. What attracted me, and I believe this is what attracts most America, is the stardom. It's that celebrity fame that he brings. It's the, I'm going to live my life larger than you could ever imagine. You know, I went out, you may remember, to Ohio, for him. I took the 727 by myself. And when I landed, they asked me, Mr. Cohen, what are you doing here? I came to just check out the first in Caucasus State. Well, why'd you take Mr. Trump's 727? Well, he wouldn't let me use the 757, right? I mean, this was the life. I was on the board of Miss Universe organization. The business card, big, thick cardboard with the gold it's the celebrity power that he brings. It's the, I'm going to live my life, larger than life. And that was something that attracted me. And I did things that, like as Anthony says, I'm going to regret for the rest of my life.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.